Have you ever tried to learn English? Felt excited at first, but then slowly stopped, without even knowing why? Maybe you bought a new English book, promised yourself to study every day, but 2 weeks later, it sat untouched on your desk. You told yourself, I'm too busy, or maybe next month, or even worse, maybe English is just not for me. But deep inside, you knew it wasn't about time or talent, it was about something harder to explain. Most people give up not because they are weak, but because they feel lost, tired, alone, or simply stuck. This video is not just about English, it's about what happens when we stop believing in our ability to change. And more importantly, how we can believe again, even after we've already quit once, or twice, or 10 times. So today, I want to share a story, a true story, a quiet story, but maybe it's also your story. It's about a man who gave up, who stopped dreaming, who thought it was too late, and then something happened. He didn't meet a teacher, he didn't move to another country, he didn't win the lottery, he just made one small choice, and that choice changed everything. If you've ever felt that English is too hard, or that you're too old, or too slow, this story is for you. Listen closely. Repeat the words if you need to. This story is for your heart and your English. Because sometimes, all we need is one more chance, one more try, one quiet voice saying, don't give up. His name was Kenji. He lived in a quiet city in Japan. He was 38 years old and worked at a small repair shop. Every morning, he took the same train, walked the same street, unlocked the same door, and sat at the same desk. He fixed broken phones, replaced cracked screens, cleaned old laptops, and listened to the ticking sound of time. He was kind, quiet, and careful. His hands were steady, but his eyes looked tired, like he was always waiting. At night, he came home, ate rice and fish, turned on the news, and sat in silence while the TV talked. Life wasn't bad, but it wasn't full either. It was like music without melody, like light without warmth. Kenji had a secret, a small, old dream he didn't tell anyone. It lived quietly in his chest like a sleeping bird. When he was a teenager, he wanted to learn English. Not for school, not for a job, just because he loved the sound. He imagined himself in Canada, walking through snowy streets, saying, "Hi, I'm Kenji," to strangers who became friends. But then his father got sick. He left school. He got a job. He told himself, one day, I'll learn again. But one day became 1 year. 1 year became 10, and the dream stayed quiet, like dust on an old shelf, until one ordinary afternoon, a woman walked into the shop, holding a phone with a cracked screen and a hopeful smile. She was a tourist from Canada. She looked a little lost, a little cold, but very kind. She said, "Can you help me? Just 5 words." Simple, clear, in English. Kenji froze. His heart beat faster. His hands remembered how to fix phones, but his mouth forgot how to speak. He nodded. He pointed. He smiled nervously. He wanted to say, "Yes, I can help you," but the words stayed inside. The woman smiled back. She didn't seem upset. She just waited patiently, like she understood his silence. After fixing the phone, she said, "Thank you." Kenji bowed, wishing he could say more. Something, anything. When she left, the silence in the shop felt heavier than before. It stayed on his shoulders like a question. Why couldn't he speak? Why did he stop learning? Why did he give up on something he once loved? That night, he walked home slowly, each step full of thoughts, full of things he didn't say. He sat at his kitchen table, turned off the lights, and listened to the hum of the refrigerator in the dark. And he asked himself quietly, is it too late? Am I too old? Is English still for me? But the real question was softer, deeper, and more important. Do I still want this? Even now, Kenji couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed with his eyes open, thinking about 5 English words. Can you help me? He remembered the woman's smile, her calm voice, her simple question, and he remembered his silence. He thought about how long it had been since he last studied English. 10 years, maybe more. He used to know simple words, used to write notes, used to try, but all of that felt far away now. He turned his head toward the window. The city was quiet. The night was deep. And inside him, something was waking up. The next morning, he walked to work like usual. But this time, he looked around more carefully. He noticed a poster in the train station that said, "Speak English with confidence." He had passed it every day, but never looked. He thought about downloading an app, about watching a video, about starting again. But then, a small voice inside said, "Don't bother." That voice was soft but sharp. It said things like, "You tried before. You're too old now. You're not smart enough." Kenji listened, not because he believed it, but because he was afraid it might be true. He remembered his high school teacher, who once laughed when he said, "I want to speak English like a native." He remembered the time he tried to say vegetables, but people only laughed at his accent. He remembered the way grammar books confused him, how he felt stupid for not understanding simple rules. These memories were like old dust in his mind, small, but everywhere. At lunch, he sat in the back of the shop, eating quietly. His coworker asked, "Are you okay?" And he nodded. But his heart felt heavy, not because of work, not because of life, but because of regret. He thought, why did I give up so easily? Why didn't I keep going, even slowly? He didn't want to admit it, but he felt ashamed. Ashamed of quitting. Ashamed of staying silent when he wanted to speak. Later that week, he walked past an English cafe, a place where people practice speaking with foreigners. He stood outside for 5 minutes, looking, watching, thinking, but didn't go in. Something inside him whispered again, "You don't belong here." And he listened. That night, he took out an old notebook, one he used to write English words in. The pages were yellow, the ink was faded. On the first page, he had written, "My name is Kenji. I want to speak English." He stared at the sentence. It was simple, but it made him feel something deep, like hearing a voice from his younger self. He closed the book gently. His hands were shaking, not because of fear, but because of memory. He whispered, "I used to believe I could do this." Then added softly, "What happened to that belief?" That question stayed with him the next day, and the day after that, like a small echo in his heart. He wanted to start again, but he was afraid of starting and failing again, because sometimes failing once feels okay. Failing twice feels harder, but failing many times makes you want to stop trying at all. Kenji was standing on a quiet bridge between giving up forever and starting again, without a guarantee. He didn't need a new book or a new plan. What he needed was a new reason. A reason strong enough to carry him through the slow days, the hard words, and the quiet doubts. But that reason had to come from inside, not from a teacher, not from a video, not even from a dream. It had to come from the part of him that still believed, the part that hadn't given up completely, and that part was still alive. 2 days later, something small happened. But sometimes, small things are the ones that matter most. Kenji was at a bookstore near the train station. He wasn't looking for anything, just walking, just passing time. He stopped in front of the language section. Books with bright covers, big promises, and titles like Fluent in 30 Days. He almost walked away. But one book caught his eye, not because of the title, but because of a sentence on the back. It said, "You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin." Kenji held the book in his hands. It was light, but it felt heavy with meaning. He didn't buy it. He didn't even open it. But those words stayed with him as he left the store. That night, he stood in his kitchen, looked at the wall, and repeated the sentence. "You just need to begin." He said it again, slowly, like a prayer, like a new kind of promise. He took out his old notebook again, turned to a fresh page, wrote 5 simple words, day 1, "I begin again." And then he opened YouTube. Not a grammar video, not a lesson, just a simple English story for beginners. He pressed play. He listened. He didn't understand everything, but he stayed. He watched the whole thing. The next day, he did the same. A new video, a new page in his notebook, a new word, hope. Kenji didn't feel smart. He didn't feel fast, but he felt something better. He felt present. He started to notice little changes. His ears began to recognize words. His mouth moved when he heard simple phrases. He whispered lines like, "How are you?" and "I'm fine." "Thank you." Not loud, just enough for his voice to remember. He was not studying. He was connecting to sound, to rhythm, to feeling. He started talking to himself while cooking. "Oh, now I cut the onion. Now I wash the rice. I am cooking dinner." It felt silly at first, but also peaceful, like he was building something, word by word, without pressure. One morning, while waiting for the train, he looked at a tourist map in English and understood a full sentence. It said, "This station connects to the old city." 5 words, all clear, all his. He smiled, not because of the words, but because he knew he was changing. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't fast, but he was moving. And that movement brought something new joy, a quiet joy, a private joy, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to be real. Kenji kept writing in his notebook. Every day, just a few lines, sometimes messy, sometimes short, but always honest. He didn't follow a plan. He followed curiosity. One word led to another. One sentence opened a door. He read children's books. He watched cooking shows. He listened to songs with subtitles. He sang under his breath. He still made mistakes, many, but now he smiled at his mistakes. He said, "Thank you for teaching me," because each mistake was proof he was doing something, trying, living, learning. He no longer said, "I want to be fluent." He said, "I want to enjoy learning," and that made all the difference. Kenji learned something important, something schools never taught him. English is not just a subject, it's a bridge, a way to meet yourself again. 3 weeks had passed since Kenji wrote day 1 in his notebook. He didn't miss a single day, not because he was perfect, but because he made a choice to keep going. Some days, he only studied for 10 minutes. Some days, an hour, but every day, he did something. And slowly, English stopped being a scary mountain. It became a small path, and Kenji was walking it step by step. He began to talk to himself in English while walking to work. Simple things like, "It's cold today," or "I need to buy bread," or "I feel tired but happy." No one else heard him, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he heard himself. He started watching English videos with subtitles. At first, it was hard, but then it became easier. He didn't stop the video when he didn't understand. He just let it flow, like water, like music. He wrote down the words he liked. Words like still, yet, almost, again. Words that weren't just grammar, They were emotions, words he could feel in his chest. He began to see English not as a test, but as a tool to express life, his life. Then one day, something happened. At the cafe near his work, two tourists were sitting at a table. One of them dropped a glove. Kenji saw it. He picked it up, walked over, and said, "Excuse me, you dropped this." The tourist looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Oh, thank you so much." Kenji nodded. "You're welcome." That was all. Just two short lines. But his hands were shaking when he walked back to his seat. He sat down, heart pounding, and smiled to himself like a child hearing applause for the first time. He had spoken English to a real person in a real place, and he didn't freeze. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Today I spoke. It was small, but it was real. I will remember this day." From that moment, something inside him changed. He stopped looking for motivation. He started trusting his habit. Even when he felt tired, he showed up. Even when he was busy, he made time. He learned to laugh at his old mistakes. The word vegetables didn't scare him anymore. He said it slowly, clearly, vegetables. Then laughed. Yes, I can say it now. He wasn't fluent, not yet, but he was free from the fear of sounding wrong. One night, he opened his window and looked at the stars. He whispered in English, "I am not perfect, but I am trying, and that is enough." He knew he would still forget words, still struggle sometimes, but now he had something stronger than memory. He had belief. He believed in the power of small steps, of showing up, of not needing to impress anyone. He didn't need to learn English to be someone else. He was learning English to become more of who he already was. A man who kept going, a man who chose hope, a man who, this time, didn't give up. One morning, Kenji looked at himself in the mirror and said in English, "Good morning, I'm proud of you." And, for the first time, he meant it. He wasn't fluent. He still made small mistakes, but he had changed not only his English, but his way of thinking. He stopped comparing himself to others. He stopped asking, "Am I fast enough?" and started asking, "Did I try today?" He understood now that learning is not a race, it's a relationship. And like any relationship, it grows with time, effort, and kindness. Kenji no longer feared English. He respected it. And more importantly, he respected himself. One afternoon, he met a young man at the bookstore lost, holding a grammar book, looking confused. Kenji smiled and said, "It's okay. Start small. Just one sentence a day. You don't need to be perfect." The young man looked surprised. "Your English is good," he said. Kenji smiled. It used to be nothing, but now it's enough. He walked away, heart light, notebook in his bag, voice calm, because the journey had become part of him. Not just the words, but the courage, the patience, the small victories. Sometimes he still heard the old voice whisper, "You're too old," or "It's too late." But now, another voice answered, "Stronger, I'm still learning." And that's beautiful. He wrote a new sentence on the last page of his notebook, "I didn't give up." And that changed everything. And now, my friend, I ask you, how many times have you started and stopped? How many days have you said, "Tomorrow, I'll try"? You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need 5 hours a day. You don't need to be a genius. You just need one thing to begin again, even if you gave up before, even if you feel slow, even if no one else believes in you. Believe in yourself and take one small step today. Repeat a phrase, write one line, watch one video, say one word out loud. It's not too late. You're not too far behind. You haven't missed your chance. Kenji didn't give up. And now, You won't either, because this time, you're not learning English to pass a test. You're learning English to rediscover your strength, to remember that your voice matters, to remind yourself that it's okay to fall, as long as you get back up. So if no one has told you today, let me say it clearly. You can do this. You're not too late, you're not alone, and you will not give up.